Hello, everyone. My name is Kenneth Steinis with Sensei Project Solutions. Welcome to Microsoft Project for the Web in the Modern PMO at Muckleshoot Casino. This webinar is presented in partnership with Microsoft and Muckleshoot Casino. And in addition to myself, you'll hear from Jamal Wilson at Muckleshoot Casino. Unfortunately, Amovis is sick today. And you will also hear from Sean Kim at Microsoft. We have some great content for you today, which starts with an introduction by Sean Kim on Microsoft's modern work management vision. And then you will learn about Muckleshoot Casino, the business challenges that launched the PMO, and also led to the selection of Microsoft Project for the Web and the Power Platform to manage IT projects. We are going to have a Q&A at the end, so do feel free to submit questions through the chat function during the presentation. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sean Kim. Sean, go ahead.
Thanks, Kenneth. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes talking about our work management vision from Microsoft. So Microsoft as a whole has our mission, right? And our mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And that's a broad mission, but at the same time, within Microsoft, the project team, we have our own vision, and that vision is for teams to work the way they want and for enterprises to get the results they need. Now, what do I really mean by that? What does that mean, right? So the first part of it being that you can achieve better results with strategy alignment to execution. So do you, from a business perspective, do you know what business drivers matter most for your organization? And are you investing your resources where it matters most? We're also talking about working with agility and flexibility. So in project management land, what we mean is that we're talking about traditional waterfall versus agile, or most likely a hybrid methodology that combines parts of both. But also different teams and different projects require different levels of governance and rigor. So is your solution flexible enough to support a simple project as well as the more complex ones? Also, collaborating globally, does your solution scale to a global level? Does it support the compliance requirements of regulated industries like financial services or healthcare or the US government, as well as GDPR? And these are some of the most prevalent challenges to work management based on research and studies that we've done with our customers. So these also represent the challenges that we are addressing with our solution, and you'll see how in this session. The first is around the lack of transparency across the enterprise. Work is happening everywhere, and they are tracked in different ways. So it's very hard to get the big picture. And without this big picture, you don't have all the information you need to make good decisions. Also, challenges about agility and flexibility. Different teams and different projects may require different tools to get the job done. Having the right tool for the right project increases productivity so you can get more done. We also expect and want intuitive and modern tools for our work today. So at home, we're used to apps like Uber and Airbnb that doesn't require any training whatsoever. So we expect this level of intuitiveness in the workplace as well. We also want an integrated solution that makes it easy to connect to other systems so that we don't have to duplicate our work. I don't know if you've heard the term WORM, right? Write once, read many. And we want to keep our business process streamlined. The solution should really match our process instead of the solution dictating the process. And lastly, we want a secure and compliant platform. We want to focus on our business and what we do best, not worry about the scalability and the security and the compliance issues. And with the Microsoft Cloud, which is the most trusted cloud, we give you that peace of mind so that you can focus on your business. And with that, I will hand it over to Jamal.
And Jamal, I think you're on mute.
All right, thanks, Kenneth. And thank you, everybody. My name is Jamal Wilson. I'm the Executive Director of IT at the Muckleshoot Casino. And I'm going to just kind of quickly go over a little bit about who we are and what we do. So background, we are Muckleshoot Casino. We are known as the biggest and best casino in the Northwest. We've been open since 1995. We are the largest casino by square footage and gaming space, as well as machine count. As I mentioned, we're owned by the Muckleshoot Indian tribe. Our business is 24/7. We do not close. We are open around the clock. So we have a high demand on IT to keep systems up and running. We have really high requirements on uptime. And so I've been with the organization going on just under 3 years now, and we introduced and kind of formalized the PMO within IT about maybe 2.5 years ago. All right. And so some of the business challenges that got us here to kind of formalize the PMO, and some of the things that I noticed as I got into the organization, is that we didn't have any standardization for intake or demand management, meaning that, projects would pop up through email or hallway conversations. We were managing projects with spreadsheets and again through email to try to keep up to date with status or where we were at. We were not able to prioritize the right projects. The team was doing a lot of stuff, but we weren't really certain if it was the right project for that moment, or was the project that was getting done, and were the resource being allocated to maybe the departments that were kind of the loudest, the squeaky wheel, if you will. And then we had very little visibility into resource allocation or to some degree capacity. So it was really hard to tell what resources we're working on, what particular initiatives at what time, and how we could shift resources when needed, as new things continuously come into the portfolio as they do everywhere. And then I think the biggest challenge is inconsistent status reporting. Maybe you have that citizen project manager that's going to be doing kind of a status by email or updating people they feel comfortable with in a way they feel comfortable with, but it was inconsistent. And that was one of our biggest challenges, was making certain that we address the communication gap. All right.
Great. Thanks for that, Jamal. So we do hear these business challenges a lot from our clients, as you can imagine. And with what you heard from Sean about Microsoft's focus today, really being about providing a platform for PPM that solves those challenges, while also being flexible enough to support both agile and more traditional projects across multiple execution tools. And that platform, of course, is Microsoft 365. So when we built Sensei IQ, which is what Muckleshoot is using with Project for the Web, we built it as a turnkey PPM solution for organizations that are already on that Microsoft platform, and it's designed to meet the most common PPM requirements, flexible enough to tailor to organizational specific requirements as well. And our clients tell us that we meet somewhere between 70 and 90% of their requirements out of the box. We also align very closely with industry standards from PMI, recommendations from Gartner, and overall just PPM best practices out there. So the solution is very familiar to most, and it's easy to adopt. It's also a true managed solution, which means we continuously update it as our space continues to evolve. So we knew that it was critical to really bring all the data together in a single location. We knew it was critical to automate reporting and workflows as much as we possibly could, and then just provide an easy, intuitive, collaborative work management space. And that's why we made the decision to build on top of Microsoft 365, which a large number of organizations already own and rely on today. So all the data is stored in Office 365's Dataverse, and we support the tools that project managers are already familiar with, including, of course, Microsoft Project for the Web. We also know that organizations vary greatly in their maturity levels, so we wanted to design a solution that caters for those that are just getting started, as well as the most mature organizations out there. So there are 3 different levels, and each of these features within the levels can be turned on and off to get you as close as possible. With Project IQ really focusing on all the features and functions and everything you need really to manage work on projects, regardless of whether the tasks are managed in Microsoft Project for the Web, Project Online, Planner, Jira, or Azure DevOps. And then Portfolio IQ adds to that the ability to manage programs, portfolios, resources, intake and innovation, timesheets, and more. And then finally, Strategy IQ, as Sean mentioned, really enables the organization to align strategy to execution and track benefits realization as well. So Muckleshoot started with Portfolio IQ in combination with Microsoft Project for the Web, and I'll hand it back to Jamal to talk more about that journey specifically.
All right, so I want to start off kind of talking about the journey, as Ken mentioned, but more specifically why we chose Microsoft Project for the Web and what it's been able to do for us. And so we chose Microsoft Project for the Web to manage not just the projects in the PMO, but we were also looking to have a tool to manage work across all of IT. And one of the things that we were really drawn to was the intuitive interface for development of our project schedules. When I started working with the organization, we did already have a tool in place, and unfortunately, the adoption was relatively low. And that was really based on the maturity of our organizations, our users. And when we looked at Project for the Web, people were drawn to it because it was extremely intuitive and it was an easy user interface. And also, we can schedule our WBS from templates. So we created templates to avoid trying to reinvent the wheel, and it allowed us to create consistency and standardization, as well as our task assignment. We were able to automate some of that process and able to really foster communication with being able to generate automatic assignment notifications when a resource gets assigned the task within the platform. And that was something that our team members were really drawn to. Not only that it was already a part of the Microsoft ecosystem, and it didn't feel for a lot of our team members like they were having to learn that one more thing or have to do this other tool. It felt like an extension of the platforms or tools they already used. And so just getting inside of Microsoft Project for the Web, it just felt like they were doing something that was very native to the tools that they already used. Plus, from an IT perspective, we liked it that it was easily integrated with Active Directory, and it worked seamlessly with our reporting tools that we were already leveraging from Power BI. As well as we're able to leverage things like SharePoint and Teams to get everyone to work in the same place. Now, while we have some users that natively like to work within the Sensei IQ platform, a lot of our users spend so much of their day already within Teams. And so that's where we find they spend most of the time, and they can leverage and use all of their projects and their workflow directly from Teams. We're able to manage our documents right there as well. So one of the things that we were able to standardize. So the document management and repository was very important for us. And here you'll see that on the slide right here. It allows us to have and track all of our phases, as well as the documents associated to those phases and our standard toll gates directly in the tool. The back end for that is SharePoint, and it allows us to have pretty refined controls around who has access to those documents and provide governance to make certain they're all there in the right places before we move on to the next phase. So for intake, prioritization, governance, and reporting was a big part of us being successful. And just having communication for the PMO and having a standardized standard reporting was a big deal. But I want to start on the intake side. One of the things that the platform allowed us to do was to centralize tracking and visibility across all new project requests, as well as our in-flight initiatives. We were able to get transparency into what criteria was used to approve and execute the work. What is highest priority and what is the highest value, and where we wanted to allocate our resources. We were also able to track costs and benefits across the portfolio and have much smarter conversations at the executive level regarding what's being worked and when we expect those items to be completed. When it comes to risk and issues, decisions, action items, project change requests, and the everyday management of just managing through your projects, Sensei IQ was pivotal in helping us get visibility into making certain some of the core capabilities of just good project management are happening on a regular basis. It gave our team new tools and capabilities to manage those items, and it also heightened communication and governance and decision makings around the facts. So here we're going to be looking at the status reports on communication. And so for us in our organization, we really are doing status reports on a weekly basis, on a weekly cadence. And this allows our team to come into Sensei, put in our status reports, and we're doing that we have our standard stoplights that we can leverage to understand if something is red, yellow, or green, and make certain that that's sorted from the highest level of risk and have smart conversations about how do we get those projects on track. We're able to govern that, put baselines around that work to see if something is off baseline and what we have to do as a team to get that back on track, as well as we're able to generate automated reporting out of this to help us understand where we're at and what action should be taken. So some of the benefits I wanted to talk about here. Standardized project proposal intake was a big one. We touched on that earlier. We were able to create forms, and it's really simple and intuitive. Working with Sensei and the out-of-the-box solution, we're able to have project intake forms, but we're also able to customize those forms based off of our needs. And so we have the capabilities, just leveraging the Power Apps to work with Sensei to customize these forms and make it specific to our organization and our needs. And so with that, we were able to get standard project intake forms. Next is our project prioritization at the executive level. And so the next benefit was big for us because in an organization like ours, we have lots of requests coming from lots of different parts of the organization. This allowed us to have a standardized ranking mechanism, if you will, or benefits classification. Understand the prioritization of any given initiative as it's brought into the organization and make a collective decision about which projects need to get funded and sponsored and started first. All right. And then a big thing from a benefits perspective is getting a single cohesive view into the portfolio, meaning this allowed us to see projects across all phases, whether it's a proposal or in the project phase. This allowed us to get transparency into not just what work was in flight, but also what was in the demand funnel and what taking on the additional demand was going to do to our current capacity and what we were already working on. And that last major benefit kind of wraps everything together with giving us standard project status reports that allows us to track towards our weekly cadence of giving our executive team members as well as our project team members really comprehensive updates on what's going on and tracking the work. Okay. And we were very fortunate to get really good adoption, both from the executive team all the way down to the team member across the organization. And so we were now able to see and get a cohesive look of what's happening from a project perspective across the organization. And a big thing for us is that we are a part of government. And so we were able to work very closely with Sensei, and they are a government approved vendor. And so that was a big benefit for us. Okay, so next steps for us. So we at Muckleshoot really saw the value of trying to onboard a PPM solution in phases. And one of the things that I would suggest for any organization either that has something in place or is looking to go towards something different is to think about what gives them the most value and to bring those components on first, stay as close as possible to the out-of-the-box solution. The things that we were looking for first was a standardization across status reporting, demand management, and project intake that was standardized. And the next major thing that we're looking to tackle is enabling the financial planning and reporting across all of our projects in the organization, and enabling our executives to see project financials, and we'll be leveraging that into the status reports. And after we bring on that capability, we'll be bringing on the resource planning at a project level. And so that will allow us to, right now, that's a manual process for us. And we do that outside of the tool. And then we marry that capability with the tool as we move through the proposal and the project phase. But Sensei already has those capabilities built into the platform, and we'll be onboarding those capabilities through the remainder of this year, which I'm very excited about. And then once again, the resource planning is going to be a big one for us because it helps facilitate that objective decision making as it relates to what projects you can really take on and what resources should be assigned to those projects. As Ken mentioned earlier, this is a cloud-based solution, so they are always looking to enrich the solution with new capabilities on an ongoing and continual basis. And so it has a release cycle where we're always getting new features, and we're able to stay in lockstep with our team over at Sensei to talk about parts of the solutions that we would like to see changed or modified or updated. And we're continually adopting new components of the solution as they arrive.
Great. Yeah. So that brings us to some questions, and we have some questions that we received ahead of time, and we have some questions in the chat window here. So Jamal, if it's okay, I'll pick some questions here and throw at you. The first question is, how are project concepts initiated in the solution and they evolved through traditional project phase gates, approvals, and financial forecasting? So I think the question is around intake and also when you're actually in flight with your projects and that governance process. So can you speak to that a little bit more?
Sure. That's a good question. So on the project intake side, it really starts at the proposal level. And so there's a module within Sensei IQ that's known as a proposal. And so there's a distinction between a proposal and the project in the Sensei IQ platform. And we intake everything as a proposal, and we have a framework that we were able to marry up with the Sensei IQ platform. And that framework takes us through different stage gates or phases. So we have a request, assess, plan, or implement and deploy. And essentially our request and our assess sit in the proposal side of the project or the initiative. It allows us to assess everything, go through a set of a governance framework and toll gates to make certain that the assessment is completed, the ROI is there, the sponsorship is there, we have the sign off. And once we have those items, and our steering committee is able to kind of move this project forward, at that point, our governance team will go in and convert that proposal to a project in which it is assigned to the project manager, and then the project team is formed, and then they start working from there. Great. And it's all facilitated within the Sensei IQ platform.
Yeah, great. And that was the follow-up question Diane had. And if I can just add to that, for Diane, then when you're ready, you then connect to Microsoft Project for the Web for the scheduling data. Next question, then sort of an extension of that, did you convert from Microsoft Project Online to Sensei? I'm assuming that means to Project for the Web. So what did you use before, Jamal?
Sure, we were a Project Online organization when I first arrived, but unfortunately, it really wasn't a lot of structure around Project Online. So we had some people that were in Project Online. We had some team members that were using the Project Thick client, the traditional project, and there was no structure placed around Project Online as it relates to a framework or governance processes. And it wasn't highly adopted, used very well, or understood. And if we're honest, I don't think it quite matched the maturity of where the organization was at that moment. And so we started to assess other solutions. We had some conversations with Sensei IQ, and we just thought that was a good fit for us. And when we started to demo the platform, and we actually started to move towards looking at other parts of solutions like Planner and Project for the Web, and Project for the Web was the best fit for us.
Great. And Paul and Chris, I'm going to come back to your questions in just a minute, but I think there's a continuation question here. So the question from Jose is, which is the added value to use Sensei IQ instead of Microsoft Project or MS Planner apps? And let me provide a little bit of context around that. So Jose, we're not replacing Microsoft Project or Planner apps at all. On the contrary, we're just adding the additional PPM functionality around it. So absolutely still rely on Planner, Project Online, Project for the Web, Jira, Azure DevOps to manage the work. But Jamal, if you want to add to that a little bit, what's the added value to use Sensei IQ in addition to the scheduling tools? I think the question is.
Sure, absolutely. So I'll start off with, we had some team members who were getting comfortable with, let's say, Planner, but it didn't give us any really portfolio views of what was happening. It keeps that work isolated into that team or the people who are using it. And that's, to some degree, that's the same thing with Project and Project for the Web. And so when we were able to partner up with Sensei, it was really gave us the portfolio the holistic view of all work happening across the organization, and then allowed us to enrich Project for the Web with some of those core project management PPM capabilities that aren't specifically in the scheduling tool itself. The risk issues actions, the proposal tracking, the governance, and allowing us to build our framework into the platform. And those are all things that, from a portfolio standpoint, we weren't able to get from the scheduling tools by themselves.
Great. Thanks, Jamal. And Paul is asking, what were the biggest challenges in terms of implementation? And with hindsight, what would you do differently next time? So again, biggest challenges in terms of the implementation, and what would you do differently knowing what you know now, if anything?
Well, that's a good question. So the biggest challenge with implementation, I think, is just honestly, it wasn't tool specific. It was organizational, and it was trying to stop everything we were doing, or really the understanding that we couldn't stop what we were doing, keeping everything running with the existing tools and statusing and whatever was happening, as well as onboarding the new platform. And so with that being said, my advice is that if you're not doing this in a greenfield, right, if you're already trying to manage ongoing operations, is to be extremely prudent about what capabilities you want on board and when, and roadmap it out in a very smart way. Stay close to the out-of-the-box capabilities as you can, and think about the capabilities that your organization will extract the most value from, and focus on implementing those first. And so if you need standard status reporting, start with that. If you need, or start with only the things that will help you get there. If you need standardized intake mechanisms where everyone is requesting projects the same way, start with those things. There's a lot of capabilities, and it's a very feature-rich platform. And I think just understanding that you don't need to have everything day one, and that's okay.
Great. Thanks, Jamal. So Chris wants to know if you can elaborate on your reporting and meeting structure and the format that you have with senior executives, leadership teams. How do you communicate with them using the tool? Again, how do you communicate with executive leadership through the tool? I think the question is.
Sure. So, one of the things we really try to do is not necessarily, like, our senior leadership is at different levels as it relates to who's going to go into a tool and who's going to leverage the reports and log into them. And so really we try to bring the data to them. We make it available to them from with links to those who want to click on it and go into it. But what we typically do is we leverage the Power BI reports that come out of Sensei for our weekly status reports. And then we put together those items in a packet. And so essentially, Sensei IQ allows us to export those reports as a PDF or our PowerPoint slide. And so we put together essentially a PowerPoint deck for them, because that's the best way in which they like to consume that information. And then it's reviewed with them at a steering committee on a monthly basis at the highest levels of our organization. But so we think about status reporting in our organization at two different levels. It's our steering committee at the executive level, and it's rolled up, really, if you will, and it's to that executive level, and we get that directly out of Sensei. And then at the project team level is the other level in which we status report, and that again comes out of Sensei, and we leverage some of the more granular level reporting and data that comes directly out of Sensei. And we view that on some of the slides here, where it allows us to see things like, what are the past due tasks? What are the upcoming tasks for the next week? How many risks do we have? Who are they assigned to? What are the issues? And what are the action items? And we're able to go through that on a weekly basis within the construct of the project team.
Excellent. Thank you. Willie's asking, according to the financial chart, is the data automatically fed from the company's financial program? I think the question is, have you connected or will you connect to your finance system?
So yeah, that's a great question as well. And so that's something we're actually working with Sensei IQ right now, is to, is to build integrations directly into our financials, our finance system, so we can make certain that we are always synchronized from a cost accounting perspective with what the finance team has, so it is real and accurate data. Right now, we are entering that data in manually, so we have processes built where our project management organization works with the finance team to make certain we have cutoff days and when invoices get in and things like that. And we input that information in a manual way, and then we just kind of have some caveats to let people know that it's updated based off of this last reporting date. But as we move through the remainder of Q3, we plan to have that a direct integration, well, with our system of record for financials.
Excellent, good. And Kishore wants to know, could you outline top 2 to 3 challenges you faced post-transformation to Sensei that you experienced with end users and stakeholders?
Sure. Well, I think that some of the things that we face with end users, I'll start with inside the PMO and then outside the PMO. So there's our internal stakeholders and then there's our external stakeholders. So the truth is, when you onboard a PPM platform, it gives you a lot of visibility and transparency into what's actually happening, and it puts everything in a single place. And when it's great from governance, but then it also shines a light on maybe some of the things that weren't getting done as effectively as they should have been done. And so we had to really kind of work with, be patient, and put structures around what the expectations were, really make certain that we were building processes, documentation, and putting help systems, if you will, in place for the project management organization internally to help them be successful to meet the standard that we were trying to put in place from a transformation standpoint. And so that in itself is a challenge, is that we really couldn't take it outside or take it external until we were mastering it from an internal perspective. And it took a lot of coaching, mentoring, help, guidance, and tracking and consistency from within the PMO, our project management organization, the BAs, and the governance side to make certain those things were happening on a consistent basis. And it's the basics, right? It's our schedules getting updated. We can quickly see if they're updated because it's going to tell us if there's past due task. It calls all that stuff up. It bubbles it up really quickly. And so it's setting expectations for, or do you have risk issues actions updated? Are they past due? And then making certain that we're following up on all these items. And then from an external stakeholder standpoint, some of the biggest challenges were having continued conversation at the highest levels of the organization to make certain that, I think prioritization was the biggest challenge, if we're honest. Going to change the narrative of I want this now because to, well, once we built in benefits classifications in kind of a ranking system where it helped us rank our projects to understand, is it a high, medium, low from a priority standpoint, helping people understand that we're looking to do the things that have the greatest impact to the organization. And even though, yes, your department's important, these initiatives help move the organization ahead the most. And so continually reinforcing that and getting the rest of our senior leadership team to be on the same page was, and it is an ongoing effort. I'm not even going to say that that's something you win. You just continue to work on that.
And I think there's a reason that it's people, process, and technology, right? But so it's definitely, I think you've found a really nice balance between, bringing the people along, having good processes, and the technology to support it. So that's great. We have, Katie wants to know, would there be a use case in which an organization would keep Microsoft Project Online in addition to what Sensei has to add to Microsoft Project for the web? And I'll start, Jamal, on this one. So we have worked with hundreds of organizations on Project Online, and as they start their journey towards Project for the web, it's not an either-or proposition. They're continuing to use Project Online on those projects where that makes sense, and then they're using Project for the web where that makes sense. And again, what we do is just bring it all together. But And maybe Jamal, can you speak to, you chose never to include Project Online with Sensei IQ. Can you maybe speak to that?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, yeah, we made a decision to standardize around a single solution that was Project for the Web. But even within Project for the Web, you have to understand that Sensei IQ, the platform, has its own internal scheduler. And for some projects, we use that if it makes sense for some groups. And so I'll break it out like this. We don't just use Sensei IQ and Project for the Web for the PMO. We kind of break our projects up. We wanted to see all work holistically. So we have this concept of projects and operations work or other work. And what you'll find is our PMO projects are our more complex enterprise projects. And then our other work or operations work are the things that happen within IT that are within the construct of an individual team. And they're managed by that resource manager. They're less complex and they require less rigor. And so we'll use a tool sometimes that fits that need. And I can definitely see organizations who are really comfortable with Project Online and have teams that are already using it, are able to bring in that information. And like Ken said, Sensei does a really good job of bringing in information from various tools and allowing you to see a normalized view of it across the board, and then report on it from a status perspective in a cohesive, standardized way. So we do that for some areas, but it's between the Sensei IQ scheduler and Project for the Web.
Great. And here's a question I'm going to stay away from and let you answer. Karen wants to know, how did you justify the cost of using Sensei IQ to your management?
You know, I suppose it's different based on the industry you're in. We have really good support at the executive levels, and that was a big part of me coming to this organization, is looking to be a change agent and bring transformation. And so we were specifically looking to do an assessment over some areas that were critical for the organization to kind of move into its next phase of evolution. And having strong project and portfolio management capabilities was one of those areas that were identified in our assessment. If we were going to be successful in some of the next things that we were taking on, this was critical. And so when we looked at our roadmap and we looked at where the organization was going, some of the big projects we were looking to do, trying to be successful with the delivery of these initiatives without having not just the technology, but also the processes and the frameworks in place to support them, wasn't going to work. So that was a big driver for us. Was knowing where we were going at the executive level, and says, when we got in a room together and we said, this is where we're going, how do we get there? PPM was definitely on the table. And so then we went and searched for what's the best solution for our organization, and we landed with Sensei.
Great. Thank you for that. We got a couple more here. Let's see. Chris has a follow-up question from earlier. How do you roll up the data? Do you simply present the traffic lights and talk through the high level on each project? So the question is, how do you roll up the data and how do you present it and talk to it?
Sure. Let me, I think the best way to kind of talk about that is, I thought we had a slide that was in this deck that kind of went through some of those things, but maybe it's not there. But basically, what happens here, I'll try to just speak to it. What happens here is that Sensei IQ does all that work for you. And so along with Sensei IQ, you get a set of Power BI reports, and those Power BI reports are broken up into different areas. There's Power BI reports for the program level, for the portfolio level, for the project level. There's also Sensei IQ reports that are targeted specifically at the resources themselves, that tell the individual resources what work they have and how they're tracking on that work. And so we leverage that reporting capability, and we've also customized some of those reports because the platform is extensible in that way. And it's if you're an IT organization that already has some experience with Power BI and the Power Platform, it's easy for you to extend the capability, either working directly with Sensei IQ or within your own internal teams. And so The roll-ups are really just done from the Power BI reports that Sensei IQ is delivering as a part of the solution. And they're already there at the various levels you need them to be. And so it works out pretty easy.
Great, thanks. Do have just a couple more questions. Ken Bruder wants to know, can I tie it into financial systems to track purchase orders and such? I'll answer this one. Yes, you absolutely can. As you heard earlier at Muckleshoot, Jamal, they're manually today aligning, and they're working towards the next level of that. But from a tool perspective, yes, that can absolutely be done. Jamal, do you want to add to that, or do you want me to go on to the next one?
No, I think you pretty much covered there. The answer is yes, you can do it. There should be no issues there.
And Chad wants to know, can you publish projects from MS Project Pro to Sensei/Project for the Web? Do you want me to answer that one, or will you?
I'll let you take that one.
Okay. Yes, so you absolutely can. So you can import an MPP file into Microsoft Project for the Web. It's a really great feature. In fact, there's a blog post on that. I'll ask Joe, my colleague, to post a link to that in the chat window here. We have a whole series on new feature alerts for Microsoft Project for the Web. So if you follow that link that you're going to get here in just a minute, you'll be able to see all of the feature alerts, the templates, the labels, the importing MPP files, all of that. Microsoft has done a really, really nice job of growing the capabilities of Project for the Web in the last couple of years. And then we'll take one last question here. Christopher wants to know, says, tell us more about the DevOps integration. So Azure DevOps. Jamal, do you want me to speak to that?
Yeah, I'll let you definitely speak to that one. We are not much of a development shop, so I'll hand that over to you.
Sure. So Christopher, the short answer is, there are today 5 out-of-the-box options, Azure DevOps being one of them. So your agile, your technical teams, agile teams can use as Azure DevOps to manage their work and then synchronize that data into Sensei IQ so that you get a complete view of the portfolio, regardless of where that work is being managed. So feel free to elaborate on that question if you were looking for something specific, but the short answer is we bring it in. As Azure DevOps doesn't natively have a project change request feature, for example. So we add the ability to do project change requests around Azure DevOps projects, or risks and issues and changes and decisions and prioritization and all of that. It's really everything around the management of the work. Actually, we're going to take one more. Can you continue to use MS Project Pro to manage the schedule and upload, download from Project for the Web? You can, if you use Project Online, then you can continue to use Microsoft Project Pro desktop client, and then so then that just synchronizes from Project Online, so that's fine. The upload, the import to Project for the Web is a one-time import, so there you would then manage the work in Project for the Web. All right, so great questions, everyone. Thank you so much. And if there are any last-minute questions, we do have 1 or 2 more minutes. Otherwise, I want to thank you all very much for attending today. Thank you, Sean Kim. Thank you, Jamal. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it.